Christina here. I know I look a little worse for wear, and again, I'm trying to really focus on right here and not looking at the screen over here, so I apologize. It's going to take some getting used to. So I guess I will start with my timeline on all of this. In June 2018, I thought I pulled a muscle in my back, moving a mattress and everything like that. But it didn't go away. Icy hot wouldn't work. Nothing would work. Thermacare patches, heating pads, nothing. I was having trouble walking, standing up straight, everything like that. It was just an overall really, really bad experience. And at the same time, I had lost my job a few months prior due to cutbacks, and I did not have insurance through them. I had insurance through the state because I didn't make enough to, like, I made less than what it would have cost to have insurance, to pay for insurance. But then when I was on unemployment, I made too much, even though I was making about 3 times less on unemployment than I was when I was working. So I couldn't even see a doctor in that time frame, like right after all of that happened, and that kind of sucks. That's just that. So I'm gonna jump ahead to September 2018. I started going to the ER a lot. I told my husband, I'm like, let's just do this. Let's get this all figured out. Eventually I was referred to a GI through the ER, and they swore, oh my God, who's the best? Oh my God. And it was taking months and months and months to get, not months. I mean, it was taking weeks. It felt like months. It was taking weeks. I mean, like, there were no openings for months. So in October of 2018, there were even more ER visits, and my family doctor, who I've known my entire life, and we actually live next door to, I've grown up with their kids and all of that, like, she's like, okay, let me see what I can do. And I would say within 2 days, she had gotten me in to see this GI. So we're going to jump ahead to November 2018 for my consult. And you can tell the GI is really, really pissed about it, that, like, he had this opening in his schedule where he was probably going to have some free time, and now he didn't have any of this free time. And he came in kind of already writing me off because he really wasn't happy the fact that I couldn't get in. They had no appointments, and my doctor, like, pretty much, like, forced an appointment. So, then he asked me my family history. My family has a lot of GI issues, a lot of cancer issues, biologic family-wise. And after asking me, he told me it's probably all in my head because family history does not matter medically. Let that one sink in. Shortly later, I want to say like November 15th, and I'm like 90% certain of the date. Oops, sorry. Trying to find a comfortable way to do this as I'm laying here. And he claims nothing was found. Absolutely nothing. He was also really, really pissed off because I couldn't keep down the prep for the procedure, so therefore I was still very, very backed up in my colon, so the colonoscopy could not be performed. So he's like, okay, we're gonna reschedule that. So in December 2018, my second scope happened. This time they had me do, instead of like the Surprep or the Go Lightly, I actually did a mixture of blue Gatorade and Miralax and Dulcolax. I had to take some Dulcolax also pills, and that helped. That worked. Took less than half of like the jug, to be completely clear. So when I'm waking up from the scope, the GI comes in and he tells me, oh, well, I didn't really see anything again. And it's probably all in your head, or it's like reproductive related. And I'm just kind of looking at him, and so is the nurse. The nurse is really baffled at this point. Like she even thought he was a little out of line with the whole reproductive system gynecological thing, because where I was having issues pain wise is nowhere near my uterus. So if that, like, absolutely nothing. And at that point I decided it was time for a second opinion and talked to my family doctor, and she got me in with my new GI, who I absolutely love, and I'll get more into that as this goes on. I made a rundown. It's like 3 pages long on these things. So in January 2019, I met with my new GI. I was really nervous because I was already written off once, and he said to me, he goes, I don't care what it takes. We are going to get you feeling better. It's like, I don't care the amount of tests I have to run. I am going to figure this out because you deserve it. And that meant everything. Like, I had been suffering for so long at that point that and so badly that it just felt right. Like, it was fantastic. And he's like, okay, let me check on the results from your last 2 scopes. Let me see if there's any images I can take a look at, and then I'll let you know. And he calls me back and he goes, well, the images are completely black. He's like, oops, sorry. He's like, there's absolutely nothing there. I can't see any images at all. Can you try and get a hold of them? And I did, and I was told by the first GI that, oh, well, they must have gone missing, and the system may have had a glitch. But obviously I really didn't believe that, because he just that first GI was an ass. So we were doing a lot, and we had to wait for insurance to approve the next step, which was a pill cam. And see if I can do a picture right here of what a pill cam looks like. Possibly, we'll see. And if not, I'll include it at the end and I'll talk about it. So the prep for that was a hell of a lot easier. It really wasn't all that involved. And we did find some spots with Crohn's disease. But I didn't get those results until June of 2019. It apparently just took that long to get through all of it, and in that time my GI actually went on paternity leave because he had twins. So, totally understandable. He was trying to get someone to look at them, but other doctors have other patients that they did have to care to. But I did get the results with the Crohn's. So in August 2019, I had another scope done because I really wasn't feeling well on all of the meds I was on. And even though I did have Crohn's disease, my Crohn's was not bad enough that I would need to be put on any sort of Crohn's medication, only because it was so mild that if we did that, chances are my body would have gotten used to it, and if I would have a worse flare, or if it were to get worse, my body would not respond to those medications. So after that scope, after I'm waking up from that scope, I know I keep switching hands and I apologize. I'm really shaky, so I'm trying to get like the best I can. So during that scope, he's like, look, there's a lot of bile in like your esophagus and things like that, more bile than that. So he's like, hey, there's more bile in there than should be in there. Let's have your gallbladder checked out. He's like, who knows, maybe this is the reason for everything else going on. Like, maybe you'll feel better if we were to have this looked at. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, let's give this a shot. So the HIDA scan was done, and during the entire thing, at one point he's like, look, you're gonna have to get up, walk around. Your gallbladder isn't even showing up on here. Like, not at all. And he's like, really, really weird. So after walking around and doing like 2 more rounds of the whole test is really weird. But anyway, like doing 2 more rounds of this, he was like, yeah, I think your gallbladder's dead. I'm just like, okay. So I was able to get an appointment with a surgeon, and I was supposed to have my gallbladder removed in September 2019. Now, I still had it removed, but not quite the way the surgeon would have liked. I even had an appointment set up and everything like that. And the surgeon, I was told that day I would be having it removed. The day with the surgeon. That is what the appointment was for. But, come to find out, the surgeon called and he's like, well, I want to do another HIDA scan. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. The HIDA scan was actually just done like 4 or 5 days prior to this. Like, just done. And to this conversation. And then he was, I'm trying to be like as comfortable because I am very, very sore. So I apologize. So I'm just like, what the hell? I'm like, seriously, like, can anything else go wrong? So my GI was like, hey, go to the ER, complain about it, have them run some tests. Chances are the surgeon will take it out that day. Well, the surgeon's assistant came and talked to me, the surgical assistant. And she was like, yeah, look, I think we need to get this out today. Based on the ultrasound we just did, based on your HIDA scan results and everything like that. And then she comes back like 10 to 15 minutes later and she's like, I'm really, really sorry. The surgeon doesn't want to do it. He doesn't think you need it done. And I mean, like, I'm crying. I'm like, I'm not leaving this hospital until this is removed. Like, through the biggest fit, because I was over it. After being given the runaround with the first GI, I was just not having being ignored. I didn't want it anymore, and I guess, that's totally understandable. So on September 10th, they did remove my gallbladder, and that's September 2019. And then things kind of took a turn. I couldn't pee 24 hours later. Now, when you wake up from any sort of surgery, from anesthesia, you are supposed to be held there until you can at least go to the bathroom on your own. I wasn't, because the surgeon rushed me out of there as quickly as he possibly could. So I go back to the ER the following day. They drained my bladder. My bladder was filled. It was about roughly 4 times the size of what it should have been. Or 4 times the amount of fluid in there than that should have been in there. But I'm okay. So they used a catheter, they took it out, they measured it, the amount of fluid and everything, and then I couldn't pee again. Like, I still could not pee on my own. And they referred me to urology. I couldn't pee on my own so badly to the point that they would send me to neurology. And then I saw neurology, and I was taught how to give myself self-catheters. And let me tell you, since having kids, I had no idea what an empty bladder felt like. It was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful being able to get that relief on my own. But the damage was kind of already done on my bladder at this point because it had not woken up, and it still was not waking up, that I ended up with a massive UTI. To the point that when I was looked at in the ER, they're like, normally we see some sediment with a UTI, but never to this point, never to the point where it's literally just a third just sediment. And I don't cry when I'm in pain. I can keep myself pretty level. But I couldn't here. I really couldn't. They decided to put in a Foley catheter, and I screamed, and I cried, and I was shaking, to the point that a nurse actually climbed up into the hospital bed with me. They wouldn't allow my husband in there for that. I'm not entirely sure why, but whatever. She climbed up in the hospital bed with me and literally just held me, rocked me, and just like kind of like patted my head trying to calm me down. Like, it was really good bedside manner. Eventually they removed the Foley catheter about 24 hours later. And I still have to self-cath every now and then, but I am peeing on my own a lot now. So we'll move on to December 2019. My GI is like, hey, let's order you a gastric emptying study. We got rid of your gallbladder. You're not having the complications from that anymore, obviously, but you're still having issues. So I had a gastric emptying study done, and what that is that measures how quickly food passes through your system. And it should actually be relatively quickly. But after about 4 hours, I had 89% of the food still left in my stomach. And I asked the radiologist that was doing the scan, I'm like, how long until I hear back? And like, I could see this on the screen, like how bad it was. Like, it was very, very obvious, because they give you radioactive eggs to eat, and then they trace them throughout your body. And she's like, you should probably in about like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, you'll get results. My GI called 3 to 4 hours after the tests that I definitely have gastroparesis. He's like, there's no doubt. He's like, no one even would need to review that for very long to even see that, that's what the problem was. So in January 2020, he's like, all right, let's do another scope, and we're going to do a Botox injection in your pylorus, which is the valve at the bottom of your stomach that food passes through into your intestines. What they do is they inject the Botox, and it temporarily paralyzes the valve to be wider. But, like everything, I had complications. I had a reaction to the Botox in which I aspirated during the procedure, and I ended up with pneumonia. And pretty much immediately from waking up from the procedure, my GI was like, I'm gonna refer you to a specialist at Temple University Hospital. He's like, I think you need the gastric stimulator. At this point, we didn't know I had pneumonia. We just knew I was coughing a lot and I was having a reaction to the Botox. When we left the hospital, normally when I wake up from a scope, I'm gone like an hour later. Like, they discharged me. It was like 3 to 4 hours until they discharged me. And then on the way home, things kind of started to get really, really weird, and I made my husband turn around. It just was And by something wasn't right, I mean, we were on our way home and I was feeling like I was blacking out. I was getting really dizzy. I was very, very lightheaded. So we turned around, rushed back to the ER, the hospital that I just had the procedure done in, because the hospital that I go through has like 4 different ones that we can get to like all of them within the area. But that was the one where the procedure was being done. So that that was pretty crappy. Like, I was pretty miserable. Then when we, they rushed me in for an x-ray to x-ray my chest. They were giving me all of these antibiotics, breathing treatments, and they saw the pneumonia and they're like, shit. So, yeah. So we are going to move on to March 2020, when I was finally able to meet with the specialist for gastroenterology at Temple Hospital. And it was a really weird experience, only because my appointment was March 20th, and that's when everything was kind of starting to shut down because of COVID, and people were wearing masks and things like that. So they were, taking precautions inside the hospital. So we met with him, and he sent me for a bunch of tests that day. It was lots of blood tests, and an echocardiogram, an EKG, and something else. But then I had to go back the following Monday to have a barium swallow done, only because I just wanted to check on acid reflux. Within days of the barium swallow, which came back perfectly normal, they're like, yeah, you're approved for surgery. You're approved for the stimulator. I also agreed to be a part of the study for it, so I guess that helped. But they're like, unfortunately, because everything is shutting down, we cannot do your surgery. Since it's not like absolutely necessary, like it's necessary but not absolutely necessary. But we'll call you back when we start opening up again and we can do your procedure. So in April 2020, I had a follow-up with my GI at home, my normal one, not the specialist. And he's like, I know your nausea is getting bad again. I know everything's just bad. He's like, let's try medical marijuana. And I was doing really, really good since, like, fan-freaking-tastic. Like, it was amazing. So in June 2020, as soon as Philadelphia County opened up to yellow phase or green phase? Yellow phase? Green phase? Green phase? Probably green phase. Anyway, that day, I got a call. They're like, your pre-admission testing is on June 19th, and your surgery will be on June 30th. I was like, yes, awesome. I was finally going to be getting some sort of relief to all of this, and I finally felt like I was so close to getting my life back. So my husband and I, we stay in a hotel the night before because we live like 3 hours away from Temple, but it's the closest hospital that could even do this procedure for me. So the night before, I was told I can't have nausea meds, I can't have pain meds, I can't have any of my meds, including medical marijuana. And that was terrible. I was so physically ill, like I was giving myself a nosebleed. I was throwing up so much. I mean, like, I did not sleep the night before. I had such bad diarrhea, I had such bad stomach pain. Like, you could tell if I was not able to manage my symptoms, that is the point that I was at. And, like, I don't like being at that point. So I was super, super anxious for the surgery. And so June 30th, we headed to the hospital. My husband couldn't wait in the waiting room with me, and he was not allowed back into pre-op with me, which is what he normally was allowed to do. But because of COVID, he wasn't. And I had a little bit of a breakdown. Nurses were really, really nice, and but they stuck me about like a billion gazillion times and had trouble finding a vein, probably because I was slightly dehydrated and all of that. I think they took me back for the procedure. I remember them wheeling me back at like 10:15-ish, 10:30 in the morning, and I can remember bits and pieces. Like, I remember getting back to the room and going from the bed I was in to this table where I had my arms out and everything, and they hooked up all of these weird things to my hands, just some sort of sensor to make sure that I am fully unconscious and fully paralyzed during this procedure. So yeah, I woke up and want to say 1:30, 2 o'clock ish on the 30th, back in recovery, and they were just waiting to move me up to a room, and it was like waiting. It was pretty bad. The nurse who was taking care of me in recovery was like, look, I'm giving you 2 shots of pain meds. Like, I know you're in pain. He's like, I can tell by your blood pressure, even though you're not like quite responsive to it, only because like I was just in so much pain I wasn't responsive. So eventually they did move me up to a bed up to a room, and went okay. It is absolutely nothing against Temple. I think, unfortunately, I had some nurses and caregivers assigned to me that were less than ideal. And I say that because the morning after my procedure, I needed pain meds. I asked for them about 6 o'clock in the morning. Shift change wasn't until about 7:30. And by the time 8 o'clock rolled around, I was asking for them, and the caregiver came in and she goes, well, you have to be patient. And I'm like, well, I've been asking for hours. Like, I'm way overdue by like 4 hours for pain meds for management. Like, it was just really bad. And it was just overall terrible. And then the nurse came in, and she was less than ideal, because I still needed IV pain meds because the oral pain meds just were not helping. I was less than 24 hours post-op, like less than 24 hours. I was like, and so she had a physician come in and talk to me, and then she came back in and she's like, I told you the physician would side with me. I told you need to be weaned off of this stuff already. And I'm like, well, the physician said for you to keep giving me this stuff, and it's in the orders, and that you all need to maintain it, even if I don't ask for it. Because if I fall asleep or something, you need to make sure my pain is managed. So it was just really unpleasant, and then I had to pee, and I couldn't get help to the bathroom, and then caregiver came in, and she's like, well, it's only this far, and I'm like, look, I'm winded. Like, I was winded by walking to the bottom of my bed, and I'm like, I need help. And then she's like, well, fine. So then I got back in bed because I couldn't pee. I'm like, look, can I have a bedpan? I can't get up and do it again. She goes, well, you just walked the feet to the thing. I don't see why you can't do it again. But then I had good nurses after that. So now I'm home, discharged a little too early. I don't think it was a really good idea. They originally wanted to keep me for 4 days. They kept me for less than 48 hours after my procedure, which I don't think was a very good idea at all, because I'm still not in a good way, and I'm still in a lot of pain, and I'm barely managing, because I ended up in the ER again yesterday. But that's another story. I'm going to end this here because this is already 30 minutes long. So have a good day.